And again, Jed, said that he's not disappointed by losing the Super Bowl. And of course, the dumbest among us in 49er land take that and try to use it against Jed and say, well, this is a lowering of standards and Eddie D never would, blah, blah, blah. And people just need to fucking chill out, dude. I mean, good Lord. Good Lord.
Well, he was also talking about just, how he reacted to it around his 11-year-old. And he painted a picture where his 11-year-old was distraught. So, you know what? I mean, I have a 14-year-old. Your kids are a little younger. But when your kids are distraught, you try to lift them up. And so that, to me, I didn't take that. Of course, Jed has a passion to win. If he's at the facility all the time, he's involved. He's not Hasso Plattner, of the Sharks walking around the streets of, Belgrade or something, he's totally aloof from what the Sharks are doing. He's very much
game in years.
Yeah. I wouldn't be able to tell you anything about the team. Jed's all in on the team. It's just that, he says, I'd rather not, I'm not going to be ashamed of very good because we didn't get ultimate great. And I think that's a mature way of looking at it. Now, some people would argue that Eddie D's singular drive and focus and maniacal approach of, nothing is good enough but victory is a key component of the Niners' past success. I would push back on that and say that's a great story that people love to tell because it's a great story. But in reality, the Niners don't win if they don't have the players. They had the players. They had the players in many other years that they didn't win. It's just really hard to win in the NFL. So
it is. And they had the players under a business model that no longer exists. Go spend money on that used to be the way you could correct all your NFL problems, and it's not like that anymore. So, I do feel like it's a little apples to oranges comparison. And just comparing any owner to Eddie DeBartolo only, like Jed York shouldn't be measured against, a man who could be argued to be the greatest NFL owner of all time outside of Vince Lombardi. He should be measured against his peers. He should be measured against the contemporary owners that he now exists among. And Jed York is amongst the most successful contemporary owners in all of football. If you want to measure that by wins and losses, if you want to measure that by Super Bowl appearances and how these guys are really all running their races, they measure it by revenue. And the 49ers have increased the value of their brand on a global scale that even 4 or 5 years ago, no one could have imagined. So, I mean, again, I have been among the harshest Jed York critics this market has ever seen. And I'm telling you, he's doing a good job. And if I'm telling you that Jed York is doing a good job, you can kind of take it on face value that he is, because I would not just throw compliments at Jed York unless I think he's earned them. And I think he has.
Well, I mean, it's a different time. I mean, I think of it as players because I look at the personnel side. There was a time where the Niners, you know what? Michael Carter's getting a little old. We better get a backup. They got Jim Burt and Fred Smerlas, and they kept all three of them. What team can have 3 nose guards? Well, the Niners did back in the day. So, and the other thing about Jed, everybody likes to talk about what Eddie did that Jed didn't do. Let's talk about what Jed did that Eddie didn't do. Jed got the stadium built. The Niners' ability to compete in the free agent market is directly tied to the revenue produced by their stadium. Eddie D tried. Eddie D couldn't get it done. Jed got it done. Now, whether you like the look of it, where it sits and this and that, doesn't change the ultimate reality that there's a bunch of suites. People buy them. It gives the Niners revenue that is non-shared revenue. The TV contract, shared revenue. Gambling money, shared revenue. So everybody's got the same amount of money. There's no advantage. Your advantage or lack thereof is directly tied to your stadium revenue, your signage, your suites, all that kind of stuff. And under Jed, the Niners have figured out a way to get in the game, get the stadium built, get the signage sold. And so that's how you get Hargrave. That's how you get Mooney Ward. That's how you get the free agents you got this year. So, everybody loves the Eddie did this, but Jed didn't. Nobody really loves the Jed did this, Eddie didn't.
Right. The people who talk fondest and warmest about Eddie DeBartolo weren't even born when Eddie DeBartolo won the team. You know what I mean? Like had the team. You don't hear old time 49er fans, I think, coming back to this talking point as much as the nouveau riche thinks that, they deserve their dynasty just like their dad had their dynasty. And that's the way I want it. And I want it immediately right now. And Kyle Shanahan's a loser. It's from that crowd. Not from the actual understands NFL history crowd that I think that this talking point comes from.
Stop acting like a petulant child. Stop being, I'm ashamed of a trip to the Super Bowl. Right. Yeah. Do we all want to win the Super Bowl? Yeah. Is it the final frontier for Shanahan and Jed and John? Well, maybe not Jed now that he's the got the team from the parents. But it's absolutely huge for the players, the coaches, John.
It's the only
Kyle.
thing left to do. They have played the video game. They've played it well. They've got the high score, but they have not beaten the final boss. And that's it. The only thing left for them to do is to beat the final boss. So, but they're pretty good at playing this video game outside of beating that final boss.
Totally agreed. And I think there's reason in this super pessimistic world that we live in for optimism, because you do have a general manager and a head coach that are tied together. You do have a personnel department that's producing players. You do have a relatively young head coach that's considered one of the top young head coaches in the league. And you do have a top young quarterback who's considered one of the top young quarterbacks in the league. So to me, the key pillars of any skyscraper that leads you to the Super Bowl has to be a GM that works, a GM and head coach that get along, a head coach that works, a head coach and quarterback that get along,
an owner that
spends money, and a quarterback that's good and works, let's just say. And they've got the pillars in place. Now it's about, can you pick the right center? Can you pick the right D tackle? Can you pick the right corner? Can you pick the right linebacker? And that's very much a question, because Adam Peters has moved on to the Commanders, and we don't know how big or small of a role he had in their success personnel wise. We're going to find out.